How to be a god over any lower vibrational emotion. You see, there was an ancient saying, he who makes you mad is your master. And the truth of the matter is, if reality or any individual or any agenda has the capability of manipulating your emotion, they can quite literally manipulate your reality. And I'll show you how in a second. But one thing that I often think about is that we experience a range of lower vibrational emotions. And it's these emotions in particular that keep majority of humanity trapped within a survival state of consciousness, limiting what they can materialize into existence. I mean, the whole purpose on this channel, as I often say, spirituality without the ability to control your reality is vanity. Manifestations of the highest importance when it comes to spiritual precedent. And I say that for the mere fact, what's the point of being spiritual if you can't even live an existence that you want to live in? But it's very hard for you to create a reality that you can be happy with when you are a victim to these emotions. And oftentimes, I think there's a lot of spiritual bypassing that people do, right? They just say, persist, do this, do this, do this. And the truth of the matter is nobody actually teaches you how to navigate low vibrational emotions, because the truth of the matter is if you can transcend your low vibrational nature, then you'll be tapping into the infinite. And then that makes manifestation in of itself easier because you can't create anything. The truth of the matter is it's the infinite within us that has the capability of creating reality or rearranging reality. But when we're limited based upon our consciousness, it's hard to do so. So not only will I be teaching you the laws of emotion, yes, the laws of emotion, but also how to navigate embarrassment, anxiety, apathy, anger, guilt, grief, shame, and fear. Because even with the work that I do with my clients, I'm hired by 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and Hollywood actors. It's just a game of managing emotions. That's what alchemy is. Transmutation, alchemy is the capability on altering your internal state. So as you can see, energy between the hands, you get me? Like this is good, innit?
Top three.
Top three. This is good, innit? I'm happy with this. But anyways, let's get into it. Now, like I said, knowing how to navigate low vibrational emotion is what separates majority of humanity, because emotions can often cloud us. They cloud us in ways that we aren't even aware of. I mean, even if you look at the levels of consciousness scale, the bottom half of that scale is red. How often do people, when they're angry, they say, I see red? They see red because your emotional state has the capability of distorting your perception. And when your perception is distorted, then that's the equivalent of not being able to see clearly. And the thing about not seeing clearly is that it's very easy to walk into something and hurt yourself. Now you can extrapolate that in a wider context, because the truth of the matter is, whether it's materializing a relationship, a career promotion, a certain job, a certain amount in your business, this third dimensional realm knows how to press our buttons. And if it has the capability of knowing how to press your buttons, it can keep you in a particular frequency. And if it can keep you in a particular frequency, it can keep you in a particular reality. I mean, even if we think about the concept that we often speak about a lot on this channel, I've got multiple videos on the concept of the old frequency. The old frequency is created from low vibrational emotions, low vibrational states of consciousness. And if you don't have the capability of knowing how to navigate it, not only will you be a victim to reality, but you'll be a victim to your old frequency. And those are two individuals that you do not want to be a victim of. I'm very, very, very excited for this video. Been thinking about this for like 2 weeks. So, first things first. To revert back to a statement that I said at the start of this video, it's very important that you understand one thing. If someone or something can control your emotion, then that means they can control your energy emotion. And if they can control your energy emotion, that energy emotion emits a signature that we call a vibration. Everything vibrates within the universe. That's a hermetic law of rhythm. Everything vibrates at a particular frequency. If I can control your emotion, I can control your energy emotion. If I can control your energy emotion, I can control your vibration. And your frequency in of itself, metaphysically, is nothing more than repeated vibration. It's vibration that has gained momentum and is now in a cyclical state. It's repeating itself, it's compounding. The universe in of itself has a compound effect of frequency. And if I can control your frequency, then I can control your reality. And see, this is why often the ancients said, he who makes you mad is your master. Because the truth of the matter is, if I can control your emotion, I can control your energy motion. If I can control your energy motion, I can control your vibration. If I can control your vibration, I can control your frequency. And if I can control your frequency, I can control your reality. The top cause metaphysically, and I know typically in the spiritual community, it's all about your thoughts, it's all about your thoughts, it's all about your thoughts. And I'm going to be explaining why in this video, why it's not actually your thoughts, how your thoughts are somewhat insignificant in comparison to emotion anyways. But this is the game. If you think about society, whether it's through the internet or mass media, it's a game of controlling your emotion. It's a game of controlling your emotion. Even reality, even your old frequency, the adversity that you go through when you're trying to materialize a particular condition of reality, it all comes down to this. If your emotion can be controlled, then your energy emotion can be controlled, then your vibration, then your frequency, then your reality. And here's the thing, oftentimes people make the mistake of trying to change their reality and without realizing that reality is just an effect and the cause is often on the higher planes of existence. It's the higher planes of existence that dictate the lower, but we get stuck on the lower and attempt to change the lower without realizing that the lower is just a reflection of the higher. How often do people focus on changing their reality? They never even think, how can I control my frequency? They never think, how can I affect my vibration? How can I affect my energy emotion? How can I affect my emotion? And the unfortunate thing about emotion, if you really conceptualize it, and I think this is part, I can't prove it, you know what I mean? I can't prove this, but I have a theory that emotion is spoke about in a way that it's something that's out of our control to hinder your ability to control it. Because if you had the capability of having control over your emotion, you could control your energy, emotion, your vibration, your frequency, and so your reality. But even think about it when we speak about emotion. Emotion is typically something that is expressed and taught to be something that is out of your control. Then due to the fact that there are few truths in reality other than what the subconscious mind accepts as true, when you now have this idea that your emotions are out of your control, then attempting to control them will be difficult, not because it's difficult, but because your subconscious mind has been arranged in a way that perceives it as difficult, so then it becomes difficult. And now you have no control over your emotion without realizing that if you have no control over your emotion, you have no control over your reality. That's a bar, write that down. And how often do people make that link? People never make the link at all. They never make the link at all. But I can guarantee you, if we put up the levels of consciousness scale, I'll ask AJ to kindly put that up in the video, the bottom half of that scale reflects a certain kind of reality. And that reality is predicated typically metaphysically. Now, of course, we can go into, systematic institutionalism, we can go into capitalism, we can go into colonialism, neo-colonialism, and all of those things. But all of those things are things that happen in the physical plane. You should educate yourself on those things, by the way. Don't be the spiritual asshole who just bypasses knowledge and you stay in this infantile state of intellect because everything is just, oh, it's just reality, it's just reflex, it's just this, it's just this. Educate yourself on those things. But understand metaphysically when we're having those conversations, that's the one thing that they seek to control. And when I say they, this can also be reflected towards your old frequency, because your old frequency is going to target your emotion over anything. Over anything, it wants an emotional reaction. It wants to pull on your emotional heartstrings. It wants to make you apathetic. It wants to make you lose hope. It wants to make you discouraged. It wants to make you sad. It wants to give you anxiety, anger, frustration, irritation, because it knows so long it can, as long as it can do that, and then you can give it a degree of momentum, and then it becomes a cycle. It compounds, and then the snowball turns into an avalanche. The wind turns into a tornado. This is the universal compound effect. So it's true when they say that he who makes you mad is your master. Now, who is making you mad? Is it your old frequency? Is it them? Is it your boss? Is it your partner? Is it your mother? Is it your father? Is it your friend? Because any particular individual that has the capability of altering your internal state has the capability of affecting your reality. And that's a bar of that down. Now think about how much power we give to people. How could we not give power to people when we have this unconscious idea that our emotions are something that's out of our control? And if our emotions are something that's out of our control, then we're putting it into the control of others. Maybe this is why people find it difficult to materialize what it is that they want, because you don't realize that majority of your consciousness has been projected and given into the hands of other people. I'm so excited for this video. I'm so excited. I know it's real when I see AJ nodding his head. You're fulfilling part of their dream. That's what that individual's referring to. Perfect. So, like I said, typically, in the spiritual community, there's this hyperfixation on your thoughts to such a degree that when you learn about the power of the mind, nigga, and you have a bad thought, you're like, fuck, I'm gonna create something terrible. Like that hyperfixation can lead to that type of paranoia where when you have a negative thought, now you're having a negative thought about your negative thought because you know what it can lead to. And it's this crazy experience. And now based upon that hyperfixation, which is really a misdirection because most people think that thoughts are the largest contributor to your frequency, but that's not true. That's not true at all. Now, before I can teach you how to navigate certain emotions, like I said, I need to take you through the law of emotions. There's things that you have to understand as to why emotion takes precedent over thought. And one of those reasons is that emotion is magnified because it is the largest shareholder of your frequency. Now, when I say magnified, this goes into what I call the two M's of the universe. The two M's of the universe is first magnify and maintain. Those are the two functions of the universe that it will seek to do with emotions. And it will seek to magnify your base emotional state through people. Now, most people don't realize that this entire universe is in of itself a construct of consciousness, this entire universe. And people are constructs of consciousness. So people typically become instruments through which your consciousness begins to reflect itself into those people. Now, let me say that much more simple. If you have an emotional state, you're either going to bring people that are in resonance to that emotional state to maintain it or to magnify it. Meaning, if you're somebody who typically, think about it like this, you wake up on one day, you wake up, you're late, you stub your toe, you're angry, you start the day off angry, then predicated upon that emotional state of anger, it will seek to magnify that anger that's already pre-existing. Hence why I always say you can only have what you already have. And if you want to materialize something, then you first need to have the mental and emotional equivalent of that thing first. And people are unaware of the mental and emotional equivalent that they're holding surrounding the things that they want to materialize because there's a contradiction. If your base state is anger, then throughout the day, you're gonna meet people that just make you more angry, I got picked up in an Uber yesterday. I was coming from my boy's house and I was going in the car and, you know, I could just tell the guy was angry. I could just tell he was angry. I don't know what was going on in his life, but I could just tell he was angry. So then he's driving me back to my yard and then we're on the motorway and then no one's in front of him. He's on the lane, no one's in front of him. Somebody's on the right of him. They just swing right in front of us. And my driver, he slams his brakes. I hit my head off the chair. This was yesterday. I'm like, what the fuck? And then he just starts mumbling to himself, the fucking guy, wait till I catch him. My Uber driver chased after the guy that nearly crashed into us. I'm thinking, what does this have to do with my ride home? He drove up to them, he said, take down your window. And these men were shouting at each other for like 10 minutes. I'm just there in the back like, bruh. I'm just there like, can I go home? I can walk from here. It's not, we're just on the motorway. I can just, it'll be like a 40-minute walk. I can get out of here. And then in relation to this, that base degree of anger that I could already feel was then magnified through people that were completely unrelated were brought within his resonance predicated upon the emotional state that he was holding. So the universe will seek to magnify your base emotional state. Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, what state am I entering the day with? If you're entering the day with scarcity, then that scarcity is going to be magnified. If it's fear, that fear is going to be magnified. If it's anger, frustration, irritation, apathy, annoyance, those things are going to be magnified through people, conditions, circumstances, and events. So the question you need to ask yourself is, most people think to themselves, I want to manifest this, I want a person, I want a relationship, I want a certain amount of money, I want that job, I want that career. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, what would be the emotional state that would allow me to make it inevitable to attain what it is that I want? obviously, if you want to materialize a relationship, then more time, love would be the thing that you should make sure that you're entering your day with and you're maintaining that, so then the universe can magnify it through people, conditions, circumstances, and events. But like I said, emotion is the largest shareholder of your frequency based upon your electromagnetic field. The HeartMath Institute done research. We have 2 electromagnetic fields, one in the brain and one of the heart. The one of the heart is 60 to 100 times, 60 to 100 times larger and more powerful than the one of the brain. So I don't understand why there's this hyperfixation on thoughts when, from a point of electromagnetism, the heart is a more powerful source than the mind, right? And you really need to begin to understand this, because like I said, the hyperfixation on thoughts, this isn't to say that thoughts aren't important. The universe is entirely a mental creation, but this is to say that there's more power in understanding your emotional state, because then you have to understand that emotion and thoughts, they lead to an interesting cycle like this. A bidirectional cycle. Emotion affects your thoughts affect your emotion affects your thoughts affect your emotion. Most people try to change their thoughts, which typically is insignificant because the electromagnetic field of the heart is 60 to 100 times larger than the brain. If you focus on altering your emotion, then naturally your thoughts will also change. Think about it like this. When you're angry, more thoughts of anger easily come. Easily. Who the fuck are they talking to? Who do they think they are? How are they gonna do this? Can't let them chat to me like this. How are they gonna disrespect me like this? Now I've had enough. This is this. Predicated upon your emotional state. Because your emotion is a more powerful source of frequency. And frequency is immaterialized reality, and reality is materialized frequency. So it's important that you understand that not only is your emotion magnified, not only is your emotion 60 to 100 times more powerful than your thoughts, it also has a bidirectional relationship with your thoughts. And most people try to change their thoughts in order to change their emotion. But no, I can assure you, if you prioritize on changing your emotion, if you know how to navigate emotion, if you know how to transcend emotion, if you know how to create emotion, this is the closest thing to alchemy when it comes to reality. So it's of the highest importance that you understand that it is the largest shareholder of your frequency. Even if you look at spiritual systems, Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart, because everything in life unfolds from it. Your heart, everything unfolds from it. There's a hadith in the Quran that says there's one piece of flesh that if it gets rotten, the whole body is rotten. The whole body is rotten. And why? Because the electromagnetic field of that particular part of your body is 60 to 100 times more powerful than the one of the brain. In ancient Kemet, Egypt, the weighing of the scales, the same concept trickled over into the Islamic side of things, the heart being lighter than a feather. So it's of the highest importance that you understand that your heart, your emotion, it is the primary source of frequency. This is why most of us don't realize that we're actually quite fucking traumatized, if I do say so myself. Like, we're actually quite traumatized because you get into this field of information, you think to yourself, you know, I'm gonna change my thinking, I'm gonna change my thinking, and it's never enough. Why? Because majority of your frequency is coming from unresolved emotional wounds that you have suffered throughout in life and you're unaware of, that are then tainting and distorting the frequency that you're seeking to materialize. What if this is the reason that nothing seems to click? Because you're thinking to yourself, let me positive think, let me positive think, let me positive think, let me positive think, without realizing that you feel like shit. Or you feel so terrible that it feels normal now. One thing that you have to realize is that emotion follows focus. Emotion, by the way, make sure you're taking notes and leave them in the comments as usual. Emotion follows focus. Emotion follows focus. Repeat this to yourself again and again and again. Emotion follows focus. The reason why I have to highlight this is because you have two different focal points, conscious and subconscious. Most people never really think about this. We think about focus like a conscious thing. We think to ourselves, I'm going to concentrate on staring at that wall. That's a very conscious process, without realizing that your subconscious also has a focus too. And the emotion that we have is predicated upon our concentration or our focus. Now, my question to you is, what are you consciously focusing on? Maybe you could answer that. Maybe you could. What are you subconsciously focusing on that you couldn't answer? And if you couldn't answer that, then you also would be unaware as to why a large majority of your emotion is constructed the way that it is. And if you are unfamiliar or uncertain as to why a large part of your emotion is constructed the way that it is, then unfortunately, you're also going to be unaware of why your reality is also constructed the way that it is. Because I need you to understand one thing. Like I said, emotion follows focus. You have conscious focus and subconscious focus. Now, in any given day, we go through life and we are consciously focusing on things, consciously giving our attention to things. When I say focus, think about it like a centralization of energy. And that centralization of energy leads to creation. Now, your subconscious also has its own focus. What is your subconscious mind focusing on? Well, neither do I. And that's where it gets very, very, very dangerous. Because if you understand this, then you can also begin to understand why your life is the way that it is. Because there's two types of emotions that are typically created. Two types of emotions. You have what I call lingering emotion, and you also have fleeting emotion. These are the type of emotion that we experience as human beings. We have some emotions. A fleeting emotion is emotion that comes and goes. It's really circumstantial. It's dependent upon the situation, the event, or the person. That emotion is immediately triggered and you can feel it consciously, you're aware of it. And it's typically dependent upon something that has just happened or something that is happening or something that you're going through. Now, understanding that a fleeting emotion is something that comes and goes, a fleeting emotion can be anger over a situation. A fleeting emotion can be anxiety. It can be apathy. It can be discouragement. Then you have lingering emotion. Lingering emotion is the emotion that typically you can just feel it with a degree of permanency. It's lasting. So if you've been down for a while, it's a lingering emotion. If you've been angry for a while and you know somebody who's just been angry majority of their life, then that's a lingering emotion. It's an emotion that doesn't disappear. It rests quietly in the behind the scenes of that person's life. It's very important that you're able to distinguish between these two emotions, because as you go through life, everybody has a lingering emotion. I would say lingering emotion is probably one or two main ones. With the work that I do with my clients, there's typically one or two main emotions that are unconsciously dictating their life and distorting the frequency that they're seeking to materialize, that is hindering their ability to move forward. Then we have fleeting emotion. Like I said, fleeting emotion is circumstantial, depends upon what's happening in life, the things that we go through, the situations that unfold, how people treat us, what people say to us, what they don't say to us. And the lingering emotion is the one that lasts in the background. Now, the lingering emotion is it's dependent upon your subconscious focus. Your conscious is depending upon, or your fleeting is dependent upon your conscious focus. So understand that any emotion that you've just been carrying, for example, we all feel like this. There's emotion that we're just carrying. It might be anger, it might be frustration, it might be irritation, it might be hopelessness, it might be despair. And there's emotion that they just come and go. The ones that have been lingering in the back, they're in your subconscious. And if they're in your subconscious, that means there's part of your subconscious mind that is focusing on something that is unwanted. Understand this. And when I say this, I'm not exaggerating. All negative emotion comes down to one thing. All negative emotion. Any single negative emotion that we could ever experience in this reality comes down to one thing. Misdirected focus on what we don't want. Any negative emotion that you could ever experience, and really think about this. You might want to pause for a minute and think about this. Any negative emotion that you've ever experienced in your life, whether fleeting or lingering, is dependent upon misdirected focus on a circumstance, an event, a situation, or something that you don't want. That is it. All negative emotion. Every single negative emotion. And because most people are unaware of this, they never come to the conclusion that surely the way to fix that would be to direct your focus to the right place, to direct it upon what you do want. Because think about it, lingering emotions that are dependent upon your subconscious focus, you're subconsciously focusing on what you don't want, subconsciously focusing on what you don't want. And because you're subconsciously focusing on what you don't want, you have that lingering emotion. And consciously, whenever you feel panic, whenever you feel anxiety, whenever you feel annoyance, grief, humiliation, shame, embarrassment, that's because you're consciously focusing on something that you don't want. More negative. It's simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Please don't let the simplicity of what I'm saying go over your head to make you think that there's more to negative emotion than there really is. There's not. It's really not. It's not at all. Even when we talk about subconscious wounds, or as I like to talk about your most emotionally intense negative experiences, those situations are still taking place on a subconscious level that is perpetuating your subconscious to focus on those things. And because they're things that you don't want, you're subconsciously focused on things that you don't want without realizing that it's perpetuating this lingering feeling of negative emotion, whatever it is that it's going to be entirely unique to you. And then consciously, we do the same thing again and again and again and again and again and again, which changes the game of emotion entirely. Because now, when you experience an emotion, the first question you should ask yourself is, what am I focusing on? When that relationship doesn't go well and you feel heartbroken, annoyed, upset, what are you focusing on? Aspects of your consciousness is being centralized towards something that you don't want and you don't like, that is perpetuating the negative emotion that you're experiencing. That negative emotion, because it has majority or, the largest shareholder of your frequency, it then has the capability of distorting your own thoughts and then keeping you in this perpetual cycle of negativity. When you don't get that job, what are you focusing on consciously at that time? You're focusing on how you didn't get the job and everything that might mean, distorted by your consciousness, that you're unqualified at this, that there's this and this and the world's against you and this and this and this. You don't close that deal doesn't close the way that you want. You feel shaky, you feel unstable, you feel scared, insecure. Why? Because you're misdirecting your focus on something that you don't want. You're thinking about how it didn't work out, it just didn't go the way that you wanted, and your mind can't get off that point. It just can't get off that point. And the unfortunate thing about focus is that focus, it's impersonal. So when you're focusing on something that is terrible or something that is good, it doesn't distinguish. Think about a magnifying glass. When sunlight shines through it, it can start a fire. And because it can start a fire, that is the equivalent of materializing into existence. But then we also have situations that we've been through that are taking place on a subconscious level. Imagine like this. Imagine if every day you watched a video of something that you really don't like, something that really makes you feel uncomfortable. That's what's happening on your subconscious mind. That's exactly what's happening in your subconscious mind. And because that's happening in your subconscious mind, you're unaware that that's happening into your subconscious mind. And then you're thinking to yourself, why do I feel the way that I feel? You feel the way that you feel because on a subconscious level, aspect of your consciousness is being focused on something that you don't want to happen. And because it's being focused upon what you don't want to happen, that is creating negative emotion. Because that's creating negative emotion, you're then feeling and not knowing why it's there. It's not there consciously, but it's there subconsciously. And because it's there subconsciously, it then has the capability of affecting your reality. And I think this is most of humanity. And this is what I meant earlier. AJ laughed when I said this, but I don't say this lightly. Most of us are really traumatized in ways that we don't even understand. Because think about if the most emotionally intense negative experiences that have ever happened to you were being replayed every day in your mind, and your mind is watching a video of those things every single day. Literally watching it every single day. The worst things that have ever happened to you, the most emotional, negative experiences, you're watching them every single day. Imagine if you could see that on your phone every single day. Think about how you'd feel. You'd feel fucking terrible. Now imagine that happening on a subconscious level. And because it's happening on a subconscious level, you're not consciously doing it. You're not consciously sat there ruminating on all the negative things or terrible things that have ever happened to you. But it's worse because it's subconscious, so you're not even doing it consciously. It's out of your control, allegedly. It's on autopilot. Then you're just feeling the way that you're feeling, thinking, damn, why am I? I've been angry for like 6 months now, why? and you don't even know that your subconscious is misdirecting its focus on something that it doesn't want, because the subconscious mind doesn't adhere to the concept of time. It doesn't adhere to the concept of time. It just adheres to the law of emotion, that the most emotionally intense experiences will be lodged in the subconscious mind. And when they're lodged in the subconscious mind, they will be replayed again and again and again and again and again and again. No different from you sat down watching all of this shit on a phone screen. No different. So it's important that we understand how to deal with fleeting emotion and lingering emotions individually, because you don't treat them the same. You do not treat them the same. Although, if one is to deal with the lingering emotion, then they'll experience lesser effects of the fleeting emotion. That is something that you should know. So I'm saying we've got to go through all of these things before we go through the individual emotions. Because you're going to have to be able to distinguish. I can't do that for you unless you hire me. Speaking of which. No, but honestly, you're going to have to be able to distinguish the emotion and then whether it's fleeting or lingering, because then that will determine how you deal with it. And something like this has the capability of quite literally saving your life. And I truly mean that. Because if you can alchemize low vibrational emotion, then you free yourself from the shackles of materializing circumstances that appear against you, or events or scenarios that seem out of your favor. Cool. Now, you're probably thinking, when are we going to get into the emotions? When are we gonna... Chill. Tranquilo. Tranquilo. The final law of emotion that I have to make very abundantly clear, and this one I can't emphasize the importance of this, and I say that because being in this kind of field, you know, not only do I have the pleasure of reading your comments, interacting with you guys, so on and so forth, you know, working with clients. And I think one of the most destructive things that I see people do is mismanage emotion. Because if you're mismanaging emotion, you're mismanaging frequency. And that's a borrow that down. And if you're mismanaging frequency, your reality will be constructed in a way that you don't particularly like. I think the more orderly you can arrange yourself internally, the more things are going to reflect in a manner that you like. And I think one of the most destructive things that people do, and I think not only is this toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing, but I think one of the worst things that you can do is to ignore emotion. This only strengthens it to go behind the scenes, which then places you to be its puppet. I truly mean this. And oftentimes, here's what happens. People will be met with a circumstance, a condition or event or a situation of, you know, that creates this degree of emotion, negative emotion, right? And they will just quite literally ignore it. And they'll quite literally ignore it. And that circumstance will evaporate from their eyes. And they think because they're no longer seeing it, that it's no longer there. I need you to understand something. When you ignore emotion, you do nothing more than strengthen it. You actually strengthen it, because you're indicating to reality that you don't have the internal capacity to deal with it. The indirect implication with you seeking to avoid something is that it is too much for you. And subconsciously, if you perceive it as too much for you, then you make a mountain out of a molehill. See the esoteric understanding of a mountain out of a molehill based upon your perception. Something that is minor, something that is tiny, something that is insignificant, you make it significant based upon your perception and the way that you're seeking to navigate that thing. And most people, we seek to avoid our most uncomfortable emotions without realizing that we have the illusion of avoidance. And the reason why I say we have the illusion of avoidance is because that emotion just disappears from you consciously. It may not be on your mind anymore. You may not feel it, but it enters your subconscious. And when it enters your subconscious, whatever situation that was, it's going to be misdirecting your focus. And if it's misdirecting your focus, then what does a misdirected focus lead to? Did you say the right answer? Negative emotion. And if it's negative emotion on the subconscious level, what type of emotion does the subconscious create? Fleeting or lingering? Lingering. And if you have lingering negative emotion, then you're going to feel like you're carrying a cloud with you wherever you go. It goes to the behind the scenes when you're ignoring. The behind the scenes being the subconscious. And is it not the behind the scenes that creates the main stage? Let's borrow that down. Just because it's not on the main stage anymore doesn't mean that it's not leading to some type of creation. It's the behind the scenes that lead to the main stage. That emotion that you're seeking to avoid, that fear, that pain, that frustration, that anger, that sadness, that guilt, that embarrassment, that shame, you're seeking to avoid it because it's too painful, of course. But once you successfully avoided it, you think to yourself that you've got rid of it. No. You have the illusion of avoidance because it's just entered the subconscious mind it's just entered the subconscious mind based upon going behind the scenes. And not only has it entered the behind the scenes, you have strengthened it. You've made it stronger. You've reinforced its position. You've allowed it to create a stronghold in your mind, which then makes you its puppet. Because then you go through life trying to materialize things, not understanding why things aren't going your way. You're not understanding why things aren't going your way because on a subconscious level, you're unaware of the aspects of your mind that is misdirecting its focus based upon the emotional intense experience. And that misdirected focus leads to negative emotion. That negative emotion, based upon it being subconsciously misdirected, then becomes a lingering emotion that distorts the frequency that you're seeking to materialize. I mean, shit, you could try to get into the frequency of your desired reality, but if it's being distorted and you don't even know, then it's almost like planting a seed into the ground and not understanding why it's growing the way that you thought it should, right? And not understanding why it grew up terribly. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a fucking farmer, but you get the point that I'm trying to convey here. You should never ignore him. Please, tranquilo, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. God. So, let me show you how to actually deal with the lingering emotion. Now, this is gonna vary depending upon the emotion in of itself. Don't worry, wipe your mouth, pull up your pants. We will get into the emotions. We will get into the emotions individually, like I said, because how you deal with shame isn't the same way that you deal with guilt, isn't the same way that you deal with anger, isn't the same way that you deal with, apathy. It's not the same. So it's important that we individually go through them, but I also have to give you an overarching structure so you can use that brilliant brain of yours and apply it and implement it. Now, lingering emotions, like I said, are based upon the subconscious misdirecting its focus. Your subconscious only misdirects its focus to things that are still within the subconscious mind. Once we understand that the subconscious mind is primarily programmed by emotional intensity, then you need to begin to reverse engineer whatever emotion it is that you're feeling that is lingering. You have to reverse engineer its existence into your subconscious mind. So whether it was an event that you experienced or an observation, whether you observed it or experienced it, it created an intense degree of emotional energy, emotional negativity based upon that intensity. And then understanding even further that, like I said, anything that exists within your subconscious can only be there due to negative emotional intensity. If it's there due to emotional intensity, then there's either an event that you experienced or a situation that you've observed that then reflects that situation. When you can find that core memory, so let's say you primarily feel shame and you've carried that with you, there's a core memory that you either experienced or observed that creates an emotional intensity that you experienced or observed that created that feeling, whatever that feeling is for this purpose, let's say shame. That, so long as that core memory still exists in your subconscious mind, you will perpetually create that feeling of shame again and again and again and again and again, because it's still taking place in your subconscious mind. Remember the analogy I said. Imagine, let's say you've carried this feeling of shame, guilt, or apathy. Whatever situation that you experienced personally or observed that created emotional intensity, imagine you're watching that, rewatching that every day. This is what's happening on a subconscious level. And the only way to get rid of a lingering feeling is to get rid of the subconscious misdirection of your focus, which means you need to relax, get into a calm meditative state, get into a calm, relaxed meditative state when you feel as if your muscles are relaxed. So your conscious mind's outgoing, your subconscious mind is forward. And then you just need to recreate that memory with the polarity of the emotion that we're going to show. And don't worry, I'll show you the polarities, but that's how you deal with the lingering emotion. Make sure you write that down, because then when I show you the emotions, that's going to make sense. So once again, just to repeat, Any emotion that you feel, so let's say you're just an angry person, you don't know why, you've just been carrying anger. Let's say you've been carrying frustration, sadness, apathy, hopelessness, shame, guilt, embarrassment. Understand one thing in particular, and that's that that lingering feeling is based upon your subconscious misdirecting its focus. Anything that's in your subconscious is there due to negative emotional intensity. The negative emotional intensity arose from a situation that you either experienced or observed that created that emotional intensity that entered your subconscious mind that is replaying that memory. That core memory, once you can find it, and the easiest way to find a core memory is to find it, the situation in the past that has created the most intense degree of that emotion, then recreate it with the polarity of the emotion. So for example, if it's, let's say if it's shame, it would be self-acceptance. That's the polarity of it. And we'll go through the polarities in a second, but that's the overarching way to deal with it. Now with the fleeting emotion, it's actually much easier. With the fleeting emotion, it's actually much easier. So let's say you look at your bank account, that shit's low. Let's say you look at your bank account and now you feel panicky, you feel anxious, right? This is a fleeting emotion because you did feel some type of way until you're like, I need to check my bank account. I need to check my bank account. And you check your bank account, you feel fucking terrible. Or you didn't close the deal, the client said no. Or you tried to go on that date, it didn't work out. Or you tried to apply for that job, you didn't get that job. Fleeting emotions that come and go, right? That are circumstantial. Remember, fleeting emotions are circumstantial. And the easiest way to deal with the fleeting emotion is to do this. Immerse yourself in it. Yes. Yes. You must immerse yourself into the emotion that you're seeking to avoid. So let's say, like I said, you check your bank account, that shit's low as fuck, and you feel absolutely terrible now. You're feeling shaky, unstable, so on and so forth. What you need to do is to open that bank account and stare at it and allow all those emotions to arise. Because fleeting emotions then become lingering emotions if you avoid them. Remember what I said about avoidance. When you avoid a particular emotion, you're indirectly implying that you don't have the capability to navigate it, which then strengthens it and sends it to the back of your subconscious mind. So then it goes from fleeting to lingering. But when you immerse yourself in that emotion, you're showing, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid to feel the pain. I'm not afraid to feel the sadness. I'm not afraid to feel the disappointment. I'm not afraid to feel the fear. I'm not afraid to feel the instability. And when you immerse yourself into it, allow it to consume you. Because the illusion that the mind would present is, no, don't feel it because you don't want to mess up your frequency. That's what it says, isn't it? It's smart, isn't it? You're like, yo, I don't even want to think about this. I don't even want to feel it because I don't even want to mess up the frequency I've been on. That's how it gets you. But the truth of the matter is when you immerse yourself and you allow it to consume you, it naturally dissolves. Because once you immerse yourself in the emotion that you're seeking to avoid, you actually begin to dissolve that emotion. It wants to present the illusion that if you experience it, it will consume you and it will ruin you, not for a fleeting emotion. A fleeting emotion, well, it comes and goes. But when you immerse yourself in it, you then dissolve it. And when you dissolve it, you take it from being negative to neutral. And then once it's dissolved internally, it's no longer there. The only way to deal with the fleeting emotion is to immerse yourself in it. So if something happened as of recently and it made you angry and you've been trying not to sit down, get into a nice meditative state and think about it. Think about it till all the thoughts of anger come up, the emotions of anger, those crazy thoughts, let them all come up. And eventually, the more you immerse yourself in it, the more they'll dissipate. The more they'll dissipate and they'll quieten. And then that's how you deal with the fleeting emotion. Now, let's get into the emotions individually. Shame, shame. Shame. That's a Game of Thrones reference.
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
I'm sure it's in the first season, no?
No.
Ah, man.
No. Mine is Aura. Shame. Now, like I said, the way that we navigate these emotions individually, it's all going to be very, very different. Very, very, very different. Now, like I said, unfortunately, I can't be in you. Let me rephrase. Unfortunately, I can't do this for you because I'm not in your mind. Yes. So you're going to have to be able to distinguish whether this is a fleeting emotion or it's a lingering emotion. Because if it's a lingering emotion, then you know you find that core memory that created the shame and then you recreate it, so on and so forth. Now, the polarity for shame is self-acceptance or self-validation. Now, shame is one of those things in which we are, think about it like this, shame and embarrassment, which I'll probably cover that next. Shame and embarrassment are like siblings, but embarrassment is something that includes the public perception outside of you. Shame is when you do something or something is done to you that makes you feel bad about you, not anything to do with anybody else, not to do with anybody else's perception of you. It's this internal let down, which can be really weird because sometimes we're letting ourselves down over things that other people have done to us, or maybe things that we've let other people do to us, so on and so forth, or things that we have shame over. Now, like I said, shame is one of those things that it's an internal degree of letdown. You feel ashamed necessarily of yourself, and typically, it is intertwined within a concept of morality, typically similar to guilt. Now, like I said, self-acceptance and self-validation is the only way you will climb out of shame. Mainly self-acceptance. Because shame is one of those things that it's almost one of those things that degrades our own perception of ourselves to make us think that we are undeserving of something. When we feel shame for something or ashamed of our actions, or we feel shame over something or so on and so forth, we have this unconscious degree that we are undeserving of something, that it's even a degree of perfect. That's what it is. Self-rejection. At its core, that's what it is, self-rejection. And the truth of the matter is, if you are rejecting yourself, then the universe will reject you too. And let's borrow that down for the mere fact that you walk in a universe. The world that you walk in is a reflection of aspects of your consciousness. Understanding that when we begin to reject ourselves, then what we're doing indirectly is creating disharmony for the external, because if there's disharmony internally, that's going to be reflected externally, and we're going to be perpetually met with rejection. Now, rejection can show up in a form of multiple ways. Rejection can be in the form of that business deal falling through and them saying no. It can be met in the most obvious example, you're trying to date somebody and they reject you. It can be met in the rejection of that job application. We reject ourselves. We're rejected by the world because we reject ourselves. And we typically reject ourselves because there's an aspect of shame that we feel as if self-rejection is the only way to alleviate the shame for what it is that we're feeling. Hence why self-acceptance is of the highest importance. If you can't accept yourself for the way that you are, then the universe won't accept you either. And let's borrow that down, because see, most of the time we have this unconscious idea, this prerequisite that we need to be this in order for things to go our way. Isn't that strange? For example, most people reject the concept of love because they're not physically in the shape that they want to be in, or in the financial circumstance that they want to be in. This degree of self-rejection leads to us being rejected externally, but the truth of the matter is, can you accept yourself for the way that you are right now? And this isn't to say that the way you are should be how you stay. That's not to say anything. But the unfortunate irony of life is that we want unconditional abundance. We want unconditional love. We want unconditional peace, yet we place conditions on ourselves. Let's borrow that down. You only think you're deserving of love if this. You only think you're deserving of money if this. You only think you're deserving of peace if this. And that all comes down to the fact that you haven't accepted yourself for the way that you are. The situations that you've been through, the things that you've done to yourself, the things that you've done to others, the things that others have done to you that have created shame. Can you accept yourself for the version of yourself that you are right now? That is the only pathway to overcoming shame. If you can say to yourself, I accept myself for the way that I am, that you are already whole. And we have this unconscious idea that we're broken individuals. Even earlier when I was saying that most of us were traumatized, we carry this idea that we're broken, that we need to be fixed. But can God be broken? Or do we break ourselves, or we fragment ourselves predicated upon the notion that we're broken? Then we seek fulfillment externally without realizing that we're fragmented, predicated upon our own consciousness, which then leads to us experiencing fragmentation outside of us. Can you accept yourself the way that you are? It's a tough thing. It's a very, very tough thing. Because like I said, we want unconditionality from reality, but we place conditions upon ourselves. The version of you that you are right now, can you accept them? Because if you can't accept yourself, then how could the universe ever accept you? If you think that you need to be better, or you need to do this, or you need to have this, or you need to have this in place in order for you to be accepted, in order for you to materialize what it is that you want, then you place a condition onto yourself. You've made a law unto yourself predicated upon that degree of shame. Now, remember, if it's a fleeting emotion, you immerse yourself into the feeling of shame. Let it consume you till it dissolves and dissipates. If it's a lingering emotion, then you find the situation that was the epicenter of this particular emotion, and you recreate it with a degree of self-acceptance. You recreate it. Now, like I said, you're more than intellectually capable enough of going and doing that yourself. If you're struggling, comment. And if I'm around, I'll help you. On to the next, rightfully so. Anywho, guilt. How to deal with guilt. Now, the polarity for guilt is a combination of self-forgiveness and ownership. Because guilt, as I alluded earlier, in shame, these things are typically when we think about guilt, when we think about shame, when we think about embarrassment, these concepts typically revolve around morality. And because people's morality differs, different people are gonna have shame about some niggas ain't got no shame about some stuff. Some people got shame about some stuff. Some people have guilt for some stuff. Some people have no guilt at all. Anyways, the issue with guilt is that guilt leads to self-condemnation. When you do something that goes against your own moral code, that's typically what we feel guilty for. When we do something that goes against our own moral code, or we're doing something that somebody else can't do, we feel guilty for those things. And guilt, we feel as if guilt can only be alleviated through self-condemnation. Self-condemnation is you punishing yourself. And if you punish yourself internally, you do nothing more than set up the universe to then punish you to the same extremity. And the only way to get over guilt is to actually forgive yourself, which is a concept that we don't really think about. We don't really think about self-forgiveness. We don't really think about that. When we think about forgiveness, we externalize it and think, let me forgive that person. I need to forgive this person. I need to forgive that person. But have you forgave yourself for the instances that you fell? Because if you haven't forgiven yourself for the instances that you fell, then you're still falling. And that's a bar. Please write that down. Because here's the thing. So long as you're not forgiving yourself, you're condemning yourself. And so long as you're condemning yourself, you're punishing yourself. And so long as you're punishing yourself, you're doing nothing more than setting up the universe to then punish you based upon your own degree of self-condemnation. The world is against you because you're against yourself internally. The only way to actually stop things being against you is for you to reach a point of self-forgiveness. By owning it, for one, being like, yeah, I did it. So long as it's nothing crazy. I don't know what some of you niggas have done. You know what I'm saying? So long as it's not crazy. But self-forgiveness in of itself is of the highest importance. Because the unfortunate thing is, if you won't give yourself forgiveness, then no one else will. Especially when you understand that people are reflections of your own consciousness. If you want forgiveness from others, then you must forgive yourself. And the truth of the matter is, everybody else's forgiveness is irrelevant so long as you don't forgive yourself. Because so long as you don't forgive yourself, you're punishing yourself. And so long as you're punishing yourself, the world is against you. So guilt can only be alleviated by self-forgiveness, by the realization that the actions that were done in a particular state of consciousness. And I don't want this to be taken in a way that you niggas can just run around, do whatever and be like, oh, I was in a low frequency. We ain't doing all of that. You know what I'm saying? Accountability is of the highest form. But simultaneously, you have to give yourself grace for the instances that you've fallen, because if you don't, you will stay on the ground. It's like what is said in Batman, or Dark Knight, I should say. You know, Alfred says, why do we fall, Master Bruce? To pick ourselves up. I love that. Absolutely love that. Why are you hating?
Can you do your Batman impression?
Brief. How to deal with grief. Now, grief doesn't just extend to loved ones. Grief is simply loss. That's what grief really is at its core. We can grieve a multitude of things, but the issue with grief is that grief is focused upon loss. And the idea that something is lost is what perpetuates the feeling of grief, right? Whenever we think about we've lost somebody close to us, we've lost a friend, or we've lost a career, we've lost a job, we've lost a client, these are things that we can grieve. And like I said, grief is primarily focused upon loss. And that is the illusion. Loss is an illusion. Let's borrow that down. Because nothing is lost in the divine economy. Nothing is lost in the divine economy. Loss only exists on these lower planes of existence based upon our limited perception as human beings. But if you were to take a spiritual bird's eye view and look at things from a macro level, you realize that things are only lost when you say that they're lost. And it's important that you're able to distinguish loss versus rearrangement. Because if you attribute something to be a loss, then you place yourself in resonance with the feeling of loss. You feel unstable, you feel panicky, you feel upset, and then that perpetuates only more loss. The only way to alleviate grief is to focus appreciation. Shift from what you have lost and focus upon what you have gained. You may have lost something physically, but you have gained something mentally and emotionally. The memory of that person, the great moments of that person, the fact that you attracted that relationship in the first place, the fact that you attracted the opportunity in the first place. There's always aspects of your consciousness that can be focused upon what was gained as opposed to what was lost, which then creates appreciation that will shift you over from the polarity of grief to appreciation. But it's going to have to take some thought in order to what to be appreciative about what was gained. Because like I said, it's so easy to focus on loss because loss is immediately what we see. Loss is immediately what we see. Well, you're going to have to transcend what you see and look at things from a multidimensional perspective beyond the illusions of reality and see what you've gained. The memory, the opportunity, the circumstance in the first place, the condition in the first place, the great moments. And if you can focus upon those things, you will naturally shift from loss to appreciation. Now remember, how you navigate these things is entirely dependent upon whether it is fleeting or dependent upon whether it is lingering, because how you deal with them is completely different. Now, fear typically arises from a distorted perception. They often say that fear is false evidence appearing real. I like the acronym.
That's a law.
Yeah, because metaphysically it's a distorted perception. We only begin to fear things when we are allowing what we're seeing to dictate what we're feeling. But like I said, if we're to transcend and see things holistically, we're not going to feel fear. Now, the opposite of fear, people say the opposite of fear is love in the spiritual space. I've never understood that. The polarity of love has to be hate. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit different in that instance. But the polarity of fear is courage and stability, because fears are unstable. It makes us feel unstable. So as we lean to more towards stability and courage by reliving situations or circumstances that allow us to feel more stable, we can then begin to shift from that fear. Because fear is one of those things that disintegrates your frequency. Hence why it's often said that the only thing to fear is fear itself, because fear is one of those things that doesn't just affect the way that our DNA restricts itself. And this is spoken about in Power versus Force. It's often said that love expands our DNA and our DNA strands stretch out so they can begin to receive as much vibration from the universe that rejuvenate it. But fear, it begins to constrict and begins to constrict itself, which then hinders its ability to receive vibrations that rejuvenate it. But like I was saying, fear comes from distorted perception. The only way to alleviate fear is by to have a bird's eye view. For most of these emotions, is to have a bird's eye view. Because there's been situations in the past that you felt courageous, situations that you felt stable. All of those, people think memories are things that die. Evidently not. If there's one thing you realize by this video, memories don't die. They just go into your subconscious mind. So you have memories to which you felt stable. You have memories that you felt courageous. You can tap back into those memories to bring some of that frequency to where you are right now, to shift from feeling fear into feeling stable. And then once you're stable, remember the magnification for the universe is going to send circumstances, situations, and people that like to perpetuate that degree of stability.
JJK slander will not be tolerated, Nero. I'll find all the existing...
Finally, embarrassment. Embarrassment typically arises from public perception. So the true origin of our embarrassment is dependent upon our public perception, because there's an aspect of our approval that we're externalizing to those around us, and we're seeking the approval from those individuals, which then makes us a victim to those individuals, because the people that you're seeking approval from, are they in the state of consciousness that you'd like to materialize? You know what I'm saying? Like, we seek the approval of people that we're not even on the same frequency on. How the hell does that make sense? And in doing so, by seeking their approval while they're not on your frequency, they then mold your frequency predicated upon the approval that they're giving you, because their approval can only be attained if you enter their frequency. So whenever we're embarrassed about stuff, that degree of embarrassment arises from public perception. The only way to shift out of embarrassment is to be self-approving. Because guess what? The only approval that you need in this universe is your own. Because in doing that, the consciousness of that approval reflects into people outside of you. And then, because the truth of the matter is, sometimes we want the approval of others when we don't even have the approval of ourselves. But when you have the approval of yourself, you no longer require the approval of anybody. And something like embarrassment, like I said, can only be attained by self-approval and detaching from a public perception. The instances that you've been embarrassed, once again, is it fleeting? If it's a fleeting, immerse into it. If it's lingering, recreate that situation for it to happen in a way that it didn't happen, so you don't have that feeling of embarrassment. And in doing so, once you can shift out of embarrassment to self-approval, then you will have the approval of the only person that you need in this universe, which is yourself. And in doing so, ladies and gentlemen, you now know how to control any single emotion.